Welcome to Spotlight Features, The Housing Divide. I'm your host, Shelby Chung. In the spirit of respect and truth, we honor and acknowledge that this program was recorded on the traditional lands of Fort William First Nation, signatory to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. From coast to coast, Canadians are feeling the pressure of housing availability, affordability, and suitability. In our community and others, signs of strain are increasingly visible. Vacancy rates are low, rents are high, and the dream of home ownership feels more distant for many. My name is Shelby Chung. I've been a member of Thunder Bay City Council for the last 10 years. I'm passionate about making sure that everyone has access to affordable and equitable housing. Thunder Bay is well known for its affordable housing market. While Thunder Bay remains affordable comparatively, the cost of housing is rising faster than wages, narrowing the cushion many families have relied upon. Issues between landlords and tenants are often tied up with the Landlord-Tenant Act, and many landlords have turned to short-term rentals to make ends meet. Short-term rentals that were meant to disrupt the hotel industry have now displaced those seeking to rent longer term. Thunder Bay has seen the rise of short-term rentals over the last few years, with over 400 units on the market, about 1/3 of which are in our older, more affordable units in our downtown cores. I'm not looking to lay blame on people trying to make ends meet, but we have a serious crisis on our hands. Whether you're a young couple looking for your first apartment or a physician looking to rent an executive condo, units are scarce. With older stock homes converting to short-term rentals, people who are looking to purchase their first home are often out of luck, being outbid by numbered companies who see housing as a commodity. Councils can lobby provincial government to regulate short-term rentals and put resources back into clearing the backlog with Landlord-Tenant Board. Councils can also permit and encourage urban density. Over the last 2 decades, Cape Breton Island has grappled with considerable challenges from a significant pattern of outward migration. The dwindling population has led to an overlooked and under-resourced infrastructure, and the pace of new home building has slowed to a trickle. However, a dramatic shift in the last 2 years, driven by an influx of international students and former residents returning to the island, has placed pressure on Cape Breton's housing sector. This situation is now critical, with Cape Breton municipality reporting a vacancy rate of just 0.8% lower than both Halifax and Vancouver. This shortage has brought people from all walks of life to the edge of homelessness, a startling reality that underscores the complexity of the housing crisis. Alarmingly, there seems to be no quick fix on the horizon.
Anywhere across the country, people are experiencing a housing crisis. Well, it's no different here in Cape Breton. There's no place to rent, for sure. Probably gotten significantly worse in the last 5 years. I think the influx of international students, which certainly helps build the economy, has kind of taken up a lot of the spaces.
We're open on Fridays, and every week we'll see some that are just on the borderline of being homeless. An apartment building gets sold, the landlord boots everybody out, does a bit of renovations, and then jacks the rent up, right?
We see everything from, definitely when we were dealing with Fiona, people who had housing that became unlivable. We see people who are leaving domestic violence. That's our main thing as a domestic violence shelter. And it's gotten to the point now where there are people I know just from my social networks, other professionals who are having a hard time to acquire housing.
There was one lady, she was, she's getting a divorce. She needed to find a place to live. They were going to have to sell the house. Her husband also had to find a place to live, and there was nothing available. And these are professionals making, decent money. And I'm talking like social workers and doctors and nurses that are having difficulty finding places to live. So you can imagine if they're finding places to live, people who are working for minimum wage, what's available for them?
The minimum wage in Nova Scotia is $15 an hour. And the living wage in the Cape Breton Regional Municipality is $21 an hour. And so you can't work 40 hours a week at minimum wage and meet all of your financial obligations. We've had staff in our organization unexpectedly find themselves homeless. And so the vacancy rate in the CBRM right now is 0.8%, which is lower than the vacancy rate in Halifax and lower than the vacancy rate in Vancouver.
This is the former Seton School. It sits on 5.5 acres of land. First thing is that we're converting those classrooms over to 19 units.
We're building 25 units of affordable, supportive, harm reduction housing. It's a rapid housing initiative development, and it's aimed at individuals who are most at risk of homelessness in the community. Housing crises are happening in communities big and small, and they require us to change. They require communities to change. Communities are going to look different. They're going to be more diverse, they're going to be more integrated, and so resistance, yes, expected, yes, worked through it, yes, so happy to be now in this stage of constructing and planning operations and looking forward to tenants moving in.
I have a lady who's worked 44 years, full-time, minimum wage job. And she finds herself homeless right now with no place to live. It just doesn't seem fair that she has to, after working her whole life, to wind up in a shelter or on the street.
Now we head to the West Coast, where like Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, homelessness is spiking in small towns such as Quesnel, British Columbia, profoundly impacting Indigenous people. Today, we're joined by Ninja, who shares her personal journey, offering insight to the challenges and realities faced by Indigenous communities, from historical traumas to current housing struggles.
What Latako means is the joining of the three rivers, so that's actually very spiritual to our people. Because a lot of the elders have told me, they're like on their wheelchairs or they're with their scooters, they're like, we can't get down there. I am homeless, and everyone says the homeless are bad. No, we're not. Wheelchair accessibility does end here because of the sand. But I think that's pretty cool for someone in a wheelchair, they can actually check it out. My name is Michelle Irwin, but my street name is Ninja. My boyfriend, he's a carpenter, so he actually made the structure, like you can tell it's like a house. My family is Frog Clan, and when my friend gave me this frog, I had to do something with it. He was our first scarecrow. By law, at first they said no tents, but we wanted an open structure, and you're allowed to use wood, is what they told us. So this is what was created. But as time went on, a month later, bylaws changed the rules because of the hoarders that they asked to move in. This whole area was covered with garbage, and that's when we got the letters. Without the extra campers, it was just perfect. Bylaw had no issue. Then bylaw started sending all these campers here saying, you have to camp at the point, and this is what happened, the result. And right here, my mom said, was our traditional fishing grounds. She said, and still to this day, I mean, if we actually were allowed to fish, all the bands would come here. We used to meet every summer, and that's just the way it was. The reason we got given the name change is because Quesnel was built on our traditional burial grounds. I was there the day she jumped. I was one of the last people to talk to her, and her nickname, street name was Eskimo. She was native from Nunavut. She was an elder, and then she went under, and we never seen Eskimo again. That was my best friend. But that's what I love about this spiritual part of this area. There's death involved, there's history involved, there's culture involved, and I love it, man. So I mean, us homeless people are not all that bad. Like, quit judging us, you guys.
Ryan McKay arrived in Winnipeg seeking employment, but found himself couch surfing and living on the streets for the first 2 months. Overcoming these challenges, he improved his circumstances and now leverages his experiences with systemic barriers to assist others facing similar hardships in his position at End Homelessness Winnipeg.
To me, hope stands for hold on, pain ends. And the pain ended for me now. And the hope got me through it. The homelessness can happen to anybody. It's not just a person, you know, that's chosen to live that kind of lifestyle. It can happen to anybody. When I go to sleep at night when I was homeless, I remember going to bed on that bench and saying a prayer that someday I'd get out of this. I'd get out of this. I prayed to the Creator that, like, give me hope to get out of this. I first started experiencing houselessness when I first arrived to Winnipeg. I received my post-secondary education in Brandon, Manitoba, but the jobs that I wanted to pursue in the social services field were not there. It was a tough struggle. I was pretty positive when I first got here, but that positivity went away as time went on, and some of the doors that were shutting in my face that I thought were going to be open when I got here.
There's always constant sirens around here. It was the same back when I first got here too.
It was just over a month that I was homeless. I stayed at different people's places. I slept on a bench. I slept at Salvation Army once. I remember sleeping in my cousin's porch at one time because it was a very small apartment. I was looking for work this entire time. I had resumes in my bag when I was walking around. Whenever I'd apply for work, they'd want a physical address. They'd ask you, well, where do you live? If you didn't have a house, it kind of tells them that you're not reliable to hire. So that was definitely a barrier, not having a physical address. I would apply for labor work. I would apply for all this work that I was willing to do just to try get on my feet and be able to afford my own place. I was desperate at the time. One of the people that I had met on the street quite frequently, he told me to go to CARD.
This is where I'd walk to CARD, and I'd come here every day because there's all sorts of different resources here.
It's where I found an employment counselor for me to start looking for employment when I first got to Winnipeg. She was surprised that I was looking for any type of work that I could find when I had 2 degrees. And she was really positive about it. She said, you're gonna find work like right away. I found a job and I saved enough for a place, but I didn't have quite enough because of the damage deposit. Even further to that, when I first started applying, because I didn't have no rental references, that was another barrier that I had to go through. We're trying to end homelessness. It's a really hard job to do. That life experience really helped me, and it inspired me to be able to put my heart and soul into this job and have the empathy to be able to advocate and add to the job, like not just do my job, but add to the job and give it a personal insight.
Yeah, get your IDs if you need IDs there.
A lot of the people on the street that I met and just had conversations with and hung out with, they all had different stories, they all had different backgrounds. They weren't just Indigenous people, they were Black people, they were white people. They all have different stories from where they come from and what they've been through, those different experiences that they had to overcome and that they didn't overcome, which led to their homelessness.
It's humbling, like coming down here again.
When I see people now on the streets, I know that could have been me. That could have been me. And I'm so grateful for every day that I have. I'm so grateful for the job that I have, especially at End Homelessness. It's a way for me to give back to where I was at one point in my life.
Very important. There's a lot of people without homes. Some people are living in basements of other people's homes and stuff. So it's always good to give them a home, build it, so that way they can start fresh.
The housing is in dire need, desperate need actually. I don't want to say the number of houses behind, but we're behind a few homes.
There's people growing up, starting their own family. An example, having like 20 kids in their grandparents' house or something. You know, you don't want that. You want your own privacy and have their own house and stuff. So it is very important.
We have a lot of people that are without homes and a lot of overcrowding within our homes. So these homes are giving people the opportunity to be able to have their own space and eliminate the overcrowding. We had some homeless people that now have homes of their own.
We have a lot of our guys are, you know, they're getting older and retiring. That we're good carpenters. We need to keep building that. We want to keep the employment here on the reserve, and hopefully they stick to it. This course is just a course. It's a stepping stone. I mean, there's other avenues out there in the construction industry, and hopefully they'll take advantage of it.
The going trend is that there are some older folks that are going to retire soon. So it is quite important to keep the housing going.
We're building 20 this year, and we have a contract to build another 30 to 50 in the next 3 years, and we should be able to get that off the ground. We're trying to get it off the ground as soon as possible. We're trying to get all the houses out as quick as possible, but we're falling behind a little bit on infrastructure, and we're hoping to address it by the end of next year.
Okay, I'm cutting and measuring the pieces that fit on the corners of the houses.
You know, hopefully with the 9 or 10 of us that are going out there, we can contribute more to the homes and getting them caught up.
It's all about everybody working and so forth, and if we keep everybody working, it's going to impact everything all around the community. People are going to be employed, so it's quite important.
And now we come back to Thunder Bay, where I'm going to introduce you to Holly Gavin from Elevate. Holly Gavin is a longtime advocate in Thunder Bay for those experiencing homelessness.
I'm Holly Govan. I'm the Executive Director of Elevate NWO. We're an organization that's dedicated to treatment, care, and support of people who are living with HIV and hepatitis C. And a lot of our work in the last 5 years has been focused on housing as harm reduction. Right now we're at a historic location where a homeless encampment was established about 3 years ago. It was a difficult stay. This area got hit by a lot of rainstorms that year, and was kind of a difficult survival spot, but they made it work because this was the best and safest option they had at the time. Our current shelter systems are not supported to assist couples. They're actually forced into separate dorms. They're separated in the shelter. Sometimes they're even separated in different shelters, and sometimes those shelters are across the city from each other. So imagine the worst point in your life, and you're separated from the one person who you know will have your back. You can see why some people are maybe making a different choice as to where they stay when they're not housed. There was an incident at Sonny's Gas Bar, which was quite infamous. Somebody decided that it was okay for them to drive a truck through somebody's tent. And the person who was in that tent narrowly escaped. They had only just left the tent seconds before they hit. And I remember watching the film of that night, the news broadcast, and absolutely horrified that somebody would do this, but I was also horrified at the devastation that the people who were in that group of friends, when they thought that their friend had died, they thought their friend had been killed, right? And then the realization that he was safe and how good they felt about that, and then back down again, the realization that somebody thought this was okay to do to them. We gathered up people in our cars and said, come with us, we're taking you to a hotel. It really speaks to how desperate they were, that some of them barely knew us and still got in the car with us. And so we got them into a hotel, and I went back to the Homeless and Housing Coalition and said, time to look into your budgets, find me some money. We got to keep these people housed. The same week that in Montreal, Vancouver, and another large city, I believe it was Toronto, were tearing down their homeless encampments and literally bulldozing them, Our city council went a complete different direction and said, no, we're going to adopt a human rights-based approach. We want dignity of access to services and care, and we want to get people moving. And they've struggled balancing the priorities of meeting the needs of this population and meeting the needs of the general public ever since. But you know, they've stayed the path, and it hasn't been easy for them. To give them credit where credit is due, it has not always been an easy line to walk for them, but they've done it, and a lot of other cities are buckling under that pressure. It's very easy to give in to, you know, baser instincts than it is to like hold the line on human rights. And so that's been an interesting thing to be a part of. And to watch as it plays out. The latest move by our city's leadership has been the Pallet Village. The Pallet Village is a community initiative that will create essentially an outdoor shelter. So instead of people having to sleep in parks, in tents, and under tarps, they'll be given a miniature cabin. And these cabins are very small, very basic, but it's basically a room with a lock between you and the outside world, where you can store your belongings, where you can feel safe, where you can be part of a village of people. And there are wraparound services and supports to go along with that. And so I think that that's a really good move. I can tell you it would be an amazing thing for my team to actually be able to say to the folks who are out here right now, hey, I've got you. Here's keys to a cabin. You can be a little bit safer, you can have a little bit more dignity, you can have access to a bathroom, to showers, to laundry facilities, to those things that they need. All the citizens of Thunder Bay deserve that. We need to put an end to this, so let's look at the practical solutions that will put an end to it for good.
Let's head to Kenora, Ontario, where Susan Evenden, a longtime resident, has watched the homeless issue become a bigger problem over the years. She's disheartened seeing them live an unimaginable quality of life and not having the opportunity to change. She hopes to help the homeless with the support of the community to bring emergency bridge housing to Kenora.
Being a longtime resident in Kenora, I have watched the homeless issue become a bigger problem. I also know a lot of the homeless people.
They all have a place at night to go to, or?
So it's very disheartening to see them living that quality of life.
Usually I just have places to stay at the last night.
And not being able to change, no opportunities. Yeah, we live in a world where they have to get clean before they can get housing, but how do you get clean when you've got all your mental health issues you're dealing with? I'm passionate for both positive and negative reasons. I'm passionate because many of the people who I see downtown, I taught swimming lessons to 30 years ago, and so I've known them since they were 5 years old.
Well, great seeing you. Do you swim at all anymore? I swim.
Good. Many of the people who've died who live downtown on the streets, I taught swimming lessons to, and they have now passed away from drug overdoses. That's hard to see a kid that you remember as a delightful 4-year-old, and now they are no longer, or they're living a quality of life that you just can't imagine. From the business side, it makes me angry that there is a solution. Pallet shelter is emergency bridge housing. It's not tiny homes. It's not something that anyone's going to live in for a long period of time. It's basically an 8x8 shelter that protects people from the elements, provides them with an opportunity to stabilize and stay warm, get clean, do their laundry, and then start to make plans for the future. And that we wait, we're cautious, we'll talk about it, we'll think about it, but we won't actually do anything. The citizens are angry and tired of what's going on. The business owners are feeling the strain of struggling through this and not necessarily being able to draw customers in. And everybody's looking for a solution. I think Kenor's ready for something like this.
Different populations experiencing homelessness need a very different approach. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's around meeting communities and people where they're at and really honing in on the context of what communities are experiencing. What we even have here in Alberta versus what's available in Ontario is going to be very different. I think home is where one starts from and where people can really reflect and create that sense of belonging for themselves. For myself personally and professionally, got into this work because it was an area that needed a tremendous amount of work for a very basic need. I didn't understand how policy and how communities could fail people. Knowing that we are often their soft place to land, it's never lost on me the value that the impact that we can have on an individual's life. I think it's my life's calling, and I am so privileged to be able to get to do this work alongside our community partners. So Medicine Hat, in our efforts to end chronic homelessness, took a housing first approach. With that was a lot of systems planning, a lot of good collaborative community work, and we really paid attention to our data and what our data was telling us. In 2021 is when Medicine Hat declared that they had ended chronic homelessness functional zero, and that was based on a federal definition, specifically with the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, and that was around baseline data. So it was really around their time that they spent homeless and on the street, and was our system able to effectively deal with that? I think sometimes nowadays there's a sense of hopelessness amongst many different people and demographics. Just life happens, situations change, job loss happens, people go into illness, mental health prevalence is at an all-time high right now. But I think for anyone that's struggling, it's always the message of reach out for help, that it's okay to walk through the door. Some of us have been there, have experienced it firsthand, and that there's no shame, and they should be very proud of their ability to reach out for help. And I think we need to normalize that a little bit, that we all struggle in different ways. We'll always see people experiencing homelessness in our community because we haven't quite found all the right responses to why people are staying on the street. So choice is something, and meeting people where that is something that we value. We cannot make people get assistance or get help as much as we want that for them to be healthy and housed and, you know, fill their days with meaningful activity and joy and happiness.
We invite each viewer to become a champion of change within your community, whether it's through supporting local initiatives that aim to provide immediate relief, like emergency bridge housing, volunteering your time with organizations that are on the front lines to address housing and homelessness, advocating for policy changes, or simply educating others on the complexities of these issues. Your involvement can make a significant difference. Together, we can build communities where everyone has access to safe and affordable housing. Let's commit to being part of the solution, because every action, no matter how small, contributes to a larger impact. Thank you for watching Spotlight Features, The Housing Divide. I'm Shelby Chung.
The issues of classism and racism and how those two things factor into decisions that we make on who deserves help and who doesn't deserve help. And in the context of human rights, those two things cannot factor in, right? A human right means you're a human, therefore you have these rights. I feel like we're seeing some of those effects here in the way that we address people who are living on the margins.